Hey guys, welcome to the Diffuser Show. Hello to all. This is a mixed martial arts talk episode, and this one explicitly deals with one topic. Conor, the notorious one McGregor. Where the fuck's me belt? What the fuck are you doing? Yeah, Conor McGregor. So, I don't know if you've heard, there's been a lot of stuff going on. ESPN, as we're all aware, at the beginning of January, took over the UFC production environment. And what does that mean? It moved from Fox. So now ESPN and ESPN Network and ESPN Commentating and ESPN Productions manage the UFC events. So it's been strange, this transition. One of the biggest things I miss? Not really. Remember, you know how Fox had the little dude? So Fox was just sold, right, to Disney. It's been peeled off. Fox has crumbled into nothing. $71 billion deal with Fox and Disney. Disney apparently fired a ton of the Fox execs. And I think they left the intellectual property at Fox, of which the individuals still at Fox distributed something like $1,000 worth of share ownership, up to $3,000 to each remaining employee. I don't know, really crazy, messy stuff. But truthfully, when you look at media and the news in these networks and these conglomerates that they've become, and I don't know if it's corruption, but just like anything else, they become so huge that they start to move outside the bounds of normal or reality or anything. And in many instances, for entertainment showing, for content and value, that many instances, that's good. It's a good thing. You get angles and you get programming and you get things that are incredible, like 30 for 30, right? That whole franchise was pretty awesome, where they'd pick an athlete and then or an event or anything, the Duke football team or whatever, Larry Bird, or some Olympic or major sporting event that occurred in the past 30 years. So awesome stuff. And then it gets weird, right? Because people start to believe that they're better and greater and that they created it, which hard work created it and genius created it. And that's all that you have to leave it to. It's not something bigger. You're not a deity. You're not the people's choice. You're not a media mogul. You're not some kind of media powerhouse. And when that evolution takes place, like Harvey Weinstein, perversion seeps in and it destroys. So I don't know what's going on with Fox. Disney owns them now. I used to love Fox. Tommy Toehold. I hated Tommy Toehold. Remember all the little characters they created? Tommy Toehold. What are you doing here? I love to fight. Tell you what. It's got some humor to it. ESPN is not that way. ESPN, it's weird. I'm not a giant sport network type affiliated individual. I don't have preferences. I think many people do. They watch one network, or maybe not. I think many people watch whatever they like to watch or enjoy in sport. And if it's basketball, if it's NASCAR racing, it's whatever, they're going to go wherever they can to watch it, right? And I think there's many outlets to view some of that stuff, but like collegiate wrestling's been on. They just had the national championships, the NCAA championships in Pittsburgh, and I watched some of that, and it was pretty awesome. I don't know or care who was covering it or why. And stupid Stephen Baldwin, every year they've had little snippets of him. He shows up at the venue, for the, I think this was day 2. This wasn't day 1. And it wasn't the Friday or the Saturday finals. But this was the past weekend. and it looked pretty cool. They had some big bouts, and it was your number 1 or 2 seed going against your, and it wasn't your worst seed, like your 30th or 28th or 25th. It was number 1 or 2 against like 14, 15, 16. And then I guess it would be like number 3, 4, 5 against 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 or something like that. I don't know how they bracketed this thing up for the first round or the second round. So there's some good wrestling though. And ESPN was pretty awesome. And Fox or whatever it was on was pretty awesome. I think. I don't know. It could have even been the Olympic Channel. I don't know anymore. There's so many fucking network channels. But ESPN has put a lot of the fights on ESPN Plus, which was the same as the paid subscription for Fox. And I never paid for it, and I never saw a fight on it, and I haven't paid for ESPN Plus, its own network showing feature, whatever it is, for these fights, and I haven't seen any of them. And I think for the most part you can see them online somewhere. But this past weekend they had a fight Friday or Saturday or Sunday, I don't know, one of the nights, maybe Saturday, and Anthony Pettis Superman punched Wonderboy Thompson after Wonderboy beat him up the first round and bloodied him. And we all know Pettis has a pretty tough jaw and a tough head. He's been in some ugly, ugly fights where his face is mangled. He Superman punches Wonderboy out, knocks him out, and everybody was like, what? So I didn't see any of those fights, which sort of blows. And it seems like this year, I think there's 45 or 48 production fights this year. So in a 12-month period, that's like 3 or 4 a month, man. Some pay-per-view, some free on the ESPN network, some on this ESPN Plus, all over the U.S., all over the globe. I don't know. I haven't gotten my feel yet, but it's been weird because on some of the fights where it used to be Cormier and Karen Bryant and Michael Bisping and Dominic Cruz or Tyron Woodley or any of those guys, who's the Irish Dragon, Paul Felder, they'd sit either in the studio or then they'd be on site above the action, outside of the color commentating, right down at the ring, and then not in the near studio, right? Really weird. So location to location. And you'd see them sometimes in the ring, in the makeshift studio above the octagon. Sometimes they'd go back to Los Angeles and you'd see them in the studio. On occasion, especially on the pay-per-view, you'd see Rogan, if he was present, with John Anik, with Paul Felder, with Dominic Cruz, with whomever was down there calling, right? And I got used to that. And now they jumped to Chael Sonnen and some gal, and I can't even remember who's with Chael. And I like Chael, but he talks fast, and he's hyper peppy, energetic, and he's got a higher pitched voice. His podcast or his onlines that he shares where he's calmer, and now he's moved to this chair. I mean, he does everything. He does it on location. So he travels around for, I think, Showtime, for Bellator, for now ESPN, for whatever. I don't know. I don't know who he's got contracts with or what he does. He fights. He fights in Bellator. I think Fedor knocked him the shit out. Crushed him, I think. I can't remember. He's sort of done. He flew down to Costa Rica. Not Costa Rica. Maybe Costa Rica. Maybe. No, Panama. Colombia. Flew down to Colombia and got the stem cell injections there. They weren't specific to an injury because he hooked up with TJ Dillashaw, I think. Who Dillashaw, maybe not. Maybe it's the Punk. What's his name? Not CM Punk, the Punk. Josh Thompson, who is a rep for whatever that firm is that gets the stem cell down there where it's totally legal. And you get 4 injections over a 2-day period. And the injections are from your own cells spun over like 2 or 3 hours and then multiplied. So they have this process where they put something like 25 million stem cells back into you. It's nothing like any of the U.S. Sanctioned stem cell treatments that we have here, which are just a farce. Or this protein-rich, PRP, protein-rich, plasma-rich protein, which is a blood reinjection. A plasma-rich protein reinjection that has a lot of blood cells back into your body that supposedly helps troubled areas. This stem cell shit, and I don't know, I think I did a podcast on it, supposedly has all your cells that have healing for things that don't have healing cells, such as ligature, tendons, right? Or for joints, around joints, right? Like your shoulder, your, what's the shoulder one that you have? You know, or your elbow, or your shoulder. I don't know, Tommy John surgery, right? I think Tommy John was elbow, shoulder was rotator cuff, right? So your rotator cuff. This thing, when you re-inject these stem cells and this material back in your body that was created from your body down in Colombia at this lab, this super level Class A facility, Tier 1 facility, I mean, on any global stretch, with a hotel right next to it, and they perform the withdrawal of whatever to then mass produce the stem cells, and then to inject it in you that day twice, and then the next day twice or something. Chael Sonnen had it, but he just had the injections generally into his body. He didn't have any specific area that was troublesome, like a knee, a hip, a shoulder, an elbow, or anything, you know, anywhere, a collarbone or whatever. So, and here's the Roomba. And let me tell you, this is a plug for Roomba. Bought this stupid thing, and it's coming. Hey, there's Riki. There's the Roomba. There's Rika. Rika's got to go to the doctor today because she is not feeling well. She has a big lump on her toe, and it could be cancerous. So we got to take her in to get this thing lopped off and then tested. If it's benign or malignant. Here comes Roomba. I got to turn this fucking... But I'll tell you, the Roomba has been extraordinarily valuable. For a month now, I got it for Tracy during Valentine's Day, February. It's now the end of March. That thing runs probably twice a day, and we don't sweep anymore in here. We wash the floor down, we use the mop and mop it. That thing picks up a handful of particulates every day off of that floor. Dander, dog hair, dog food, dust, material from the backyard, material from the front yard, whatever. It's awesome. It's a private sweeper. Not a maid, but a private sweeper. Tracy doesn't run the vacuum. We don't have shit everywhere you got to clean up anymore. I will mop the kitchen once or twice a day, or once or twice a week. But the Roomba has done it. I got to turn it up. Hold on. So that was the Roomba. So anyway, I get so distracted on this shit. I had somebody tell me you need to have a script, and I was like, have a script, suck a script, right? But I think maybe that would help. You know what it would help? I thought about it. Nothing! Because nobody's going to watch this shit anyway. A script for what? For somebody that goes, you said you were going to talk about Conor McGregor, and now you're 13 minutes into this, and you haven't talked about Conor McGregor. What the hell? Whatever, dude. There's 8 million channels out there where Chael Sonnen for 6 minutes will talk about Conor McGregor. Fuck. Anyway, so I was talking about stem cells in Colombia or whatever, but I was talking about ESPN and how I haven't gotten the feel for ESPN yet, and I don't like Chael Sonnen as a commentator for UFC or for MMA or for any fights or for whatever on TV. He's too loud and squeaky. He's too energetic. I don't like it, and it's a bummer. I like his statements on the internet where he's got the microphone or he's in a chair and he's calm. When he gets energetic and turns on the Chael Sonnen marketer, performer, whatever, and kicks it up a notch, it's too much. So that's been different, and I don't think I've purchased an event this year. I know I haven't purchased an event this year. I liked Fox. I liked Zuffa with Fox. I liked the UFC pay-per-views with Fox. I'm not sure this ESPN thing. And the Stephen Smith, is that him? The ESPN jewel? I hate him. He's a loudmouth stupid. Like every other commentator, I don't like his views. He's controversial. I don't think he's super intelligent, quippy, sharp, smart. He comes across as blah. He comes across as bland, normal. So I don't know. Michael Wilbon and some of them. Shannon Sharp, I even like better. Stephen A. Smith or whoever the hell. And apparently that guy owns ESPN. I don't know. I don't like ESPN. So the UFC, it seems to me, has taken I don't know what. And I don't know if it's going to help or hinder or do nothing with the UFC viewership, the global brand. Maybe nothing's going to stop that. Who the hell knows? It seems like it just keeps crushing. But to get back to the point of this damn podcast, Conor McGregor Tuesday morning on Instagram wrote this. Hey guys, quick announcement. I've decided to retire from the sport formerly known as mixed martial art today. Hey guys, quick announcement. I've decided to retire from the sport formerly known as mixed martial art today. So I don't know what it's known now as, mixed martial art. Maybe he was bombed on his proper 12. I wish all my old colleagues well going forward in competition. I wish all my old colleagues well going forward. I now join me former partners on this venture already in retirement. Proper pina coladas on me, fellas. So he doesn't make a statement without referencing his scotch, his whiskey, which is a blend. It is not a single malt like any of the ones you see up there. That is not a single malt. That's Chivas Regal. That's a blend. But most Macallan, Ardbeg, Glenlivet, Glenmorangie, Oban, one of my favorite, Oban, Scotch whiskey. The Belvany, those are all single malts. Conor McGregor has a blend. And the blend comes out of one of the famed breweries. I can't remember. It could be Jameson. So what he did was, took a lot of money, went to the Scotch makers at the Jameson, what the hell is it called? Not a brewery. Brewery's for beer. Whatever the hell you call it, where they make scotch, right? So he went to that establishment and said, I want my own alcohol, my own Scotch whiskey. And it's not a single malt, meaning from a single malt. It's a blend of malts that they combine together, like Chivas Regal, right? Or Jameson, which has multiple scotches that they put together, 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4, maybe 5, in a blended flavor so that it cuts out any of the severity. And if you know anything about scotch, like some of it tastes like peat, it's really smoky and earthy. Some of it tastes like sweet water that has a mild burn to it. Some of it tastes like fire. And it's dependent upon where it's actually produced on the Scottish Isles, right? Somewhere on the island. But a blend curbs all those peaks, so it's not as severe, and it's smoother, and it's got little flavors of vanilla and earth and leather and peat and whatever. So it's got some smokiness. So some people really love the blends. I do not. I like the single malts. I like the single alone. I don't like the peat flavors that go from the northern Irish part, the islands, the islets or whatever they're not islets, whatever they call it in Irish, right? But it's like the more remote areas around the water, and God, does it taste like that peat, burnt licorice, earthy flavor. Whew. I mean, it sort of feels like you're drinking electrical tape sometimes. You know that smell with your 1,000-mile-an-hour tape? It's like you're drinking that smell. Ew, it's not delish. And yet, if you ask those mofos that grew up and that have been brewed that, or have produced that scotch in the distillery, Jesus H, distilled that scotch for 300 years, they would stab you and cut your head off and put it on a steak if you said something bad about it. What the fuck you talking about me scotch? Which is how Conor McGregor is. He went to the Jameson distillery. He gave him a lot of money and he said, I want my own notorious branded scotch whiskey. And they said, too late. You can't. It already exists and it's copyrighted and patented and whatever. So fuck you, Conor. So he went with the proper 12. The proper 12. And I don't remember what the connotation is for proper 12. I think it has to do with, it's the drink for, it's the proper drink, which is terminology that they use in Ireland. It's the correct drink for 12. I don't know, for a pub, for your friends. I don't know. I read it somewhere. I can't remember. That's how unimaginative and unimpressive it was. So he put his own spin on it because he wanted the notorious one or notorious whiskey, and he couldn't get it. And apparently this stuff sat the minimum in a barrel aging for the actual certification and the ability to name it Scotch whiskey, which I think is 3 years. If you don't know Scotch, the longer you age it, the smoother it flavors. It takes the edge off all the peaks and valleys, right? And so it's sort of this smooth flavor, which some people love, some people don't like. They like the edginess. So irrelevant to any of that, if you go from 10 to 15 to 18 to 20 to 22 to 25 to 30 to 45 to 50 year aged Scotch, whiskey, Scotch, way more expensive, right? Way more, into the thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for that Scotch, especially the single malt, like Macallan, like any of the great known Scotches. And it has many subtle flavors that it picks up here or there. And if you have a really particular palate and you're very skilled at the flavor tasting in Scotch, you get a lot of cool tones, right? With whatever that thing predominantly is. If it has vanilla and hints of leather and hints of honey or, whatever that Scotch is well known for. So Conor's is at the very cusp of that in 3 years. And apparently, without that aging, you get a lot of that alcohol flavor. And I'm talking about when you drink vodka or hard whiskey, where you get those fumes and that boom, and it smashes your nose, it smashes your palate, it smashes your throat, your esophagus, and you're like, oh, it's like drinking jet fuel. Conor's has a couple of those attributes, and when it came out from real Scotch enthusiasts, they said it was sort of shit. But because of his branding, we're a folks me built, Conor McGregor. We're not here to take part, we're here to take over! Because of the Conor McGregor reality, which swept Ireland, swept the UFC, and swept this globe to the point where he stepped up and fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. for $100 million, and Floyd Mayweather walked away with $300 million. He fought Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov, after he threw a hand truck, a metal hand truck with two huge wheels and the plate on the bottom, into a bus window, smashing the giant pseudo plexiglass window down onto the participants who were UFC fighters waiting in a loading area in the Madison Square Garden Center, where the bus would take them to different parts of the venue, to their hotel, whatever. Michael Chiesa had the glass fall on him. He's got a mullet. He's sort of a white trashy fighter. He's okay. The glass fell and cut his forehead. It sprinkled him with particles. Thug Rose Namajunas was on board. A lot of the fighters were on board, and they minded their own shit. You saw the smartness. You saw the intellectual curve of fighters. And when I say that, a number of fighters did this. and stepped backward with their phone and said, "This thing's going to unfold however. I'm out," which is intelligent. A couple of the fighters did not, and Chiesa had glass on him, and he was pissed, and he stormed off the bus, and he wanted to fight McGregor and his group of 25 retards that he'd had board a plane in Ireland, fly over to New York for this event, which he was not partaking in, but Khabib was, and Khabib was fighting, fighting El Iaquinta, I think, and he beat El Iaquinta in a 5-round decision. El Iaquinta really showed some gumption in that, man. And Conor threw that hand truck through the bus window, smashed the glass everywhere, and it was not the smartest thing to do. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't smart. Not for a top ticket company branded trademark item of the UFC. So that was a bit of a bummer. And he went to court and he got that cleared after he did whatever. Community service, paid his fines, blah, 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 right? Assumed his guilt. And so that was written off. But that started the controversy with Khabib. And it didn't start the controversy. Conor had actually flown to New York because Khabib, Khabib, Khabib Nurmagomedov, which is he's a Dagestani, I think, Dagestan. One of the stans over there, Kazakhstan, I think he's Dagestan. He had slapped around one of the Dagestani fighters that trains with Conor. It is in Conor's camp. He'd cornered him in a hall over there, and this guy was supposed to fight, I think, or he was cornering someone. And Khabib put his hand on him and smacked him around like, "Listen, you fought. Don't do that. Never talk about me again." So Khabib brought the ugly champion pain down on this little puke. And I can't remember his name, but he called Conor immediately, this guy did, and Conor and his clan came over to back this dude. And that's what it transpired. What transpired and it culminated in. The paramount action was the handcart through the bus window. The video, the fleeing of Conor, the total outrage everywhere of everyone, blah, blah, blah. And then the court hearing, blah, blah, blah. And then the scheduling of the championship fight. And I tell you what, I think we all sort of knew, but we didn't know. Conor hadn't fought in a year or 2 years. He'd fought Floyd Mayweather. I think we knew his best fights were over. I think he knew that. I think he knew that the strike, when he hit that big payday with Floyd Mayweather and did the 10 rounds of boxing, whatever, until he lost, right? And he went a solid 6 or 8 rounds, and then he gassed. And Floyd beat him up with the little Floyd pepper. His payday was it. He never needed to fight again, and he said that openly. So I sort of knew we were not going to see the same Conor. I hoped we would. My son Jeffrey said, "Nah, dude, Khabib's going to kill this dude." Khabib. And he did. He walked in and in the 3rd round mangled Conor after he beat him up excessively. And after, I think in the 1st round, with a looping right hand, I can't remember if he's a Southie. I think he's a right-hander. He knocked Conor on his ass. Conor got hit and knocked down. So that was it. That was the end, man, of Conor McGregor, the fighter. And so Conor, yesterday, whenever, announced that he's retiring. He did this in 2016, and he did it primarily as a ploy, as a marketing ploy to make more money. He doesn't need to make more money, and he said from day one, after that Floyd Mayweather fight, "I never need to fight again." And his endorsements, his winnings from the UFC, his payday from the fight where he lost to Khabib was $3 million, of which I think he got all of it immediately after the fight. Whereas Khabib was $1 million or $2 million, and the Gaming Commission in New York or Nevada, due to, as we all know, Khabib knocking Conor the fuck out, choking him out in the 3rd round, crushing his head so that Conor tapped, bloody, beaten, squatting on his ass against the cage, Khabib screaming at him, standing over him. They break up, and then the little minion in Conor's corner starts mouthing off outside the gate, the fence. So Khabib flies over the fence and does an eagle into the crowd at him. And that's when this thing sort of derailed into larger than life, or maybe before. Habib got a 9-month suspension. Finally, the findings were Conor got a 6-month suspension. I think they paid Habib his money, his $1 million or $2 million, or half of it or something, and then he was penalized. Khabib, I think, said something to the effect like, fuck you guys, I'm the champ, you're all idiots, right? And he went back to Dagestan, and he's training in that giant metal gym built by Russians, built by our boy over there in the Kremlin, because there are direct ties with Khabib's coaches, with Khabib's staff, with the people he knows that are tied to the Dagestani military that roll right up to Putin. It's known. And Conor made allusions to that. So there are clear ties. And why would there be? It's Dagestan, right? They got nothing there. You wrestle bears out in the woods. So all of a sudden you got a gym, and there's a little town that's not really terrible. It's got some facilities where you can bring 250 mixed martial artists. And wouldn't Putin love to really grow some animals that maul the rest of the world? Because that's what Putin shows. Russia, we lead the way. They're the greatest, right? That's what happens. America against Russia, it'll never stop. Maybe it will. But he's been over there. So Conor was in talks with Fallon, Jimmy Fallon, on his show 2 nights ago, maybe Sunday, Monday night, I don't know, Friday night. And he told Fallon he was in talks to fight in June, July, maybe October, something like that. And then a day or a few later, he comes out and says he's retiring. And when he was talking with Fallon, he talked about everything. He talked about how well his Proper 12 is doing. And this pseudo OK whiskey is killing it because of Conor McGregor, because of the brand. So it's selling out everywhere. And I'm sure it's doing well, meaning that it's probably making millions of dollars. But I'm sure when he produced the whiskey, he didn't invest tens of millions of dollars in it. He invested a couple, $5 million, $2 million. And because of that, they took whatever the stock whiskey that Jameson was aging, and with whatever flavor, and probably rebranded it as Proper 12, right? For Conor. Unknown what type of production and success in release it would have. Well, it's blown up. So I'm sure Conor has visited the Jameson distillery. They have a section now for Proper 12. It's probably a huge section knowing Conor. He's visited the master distillers. He's told them he wants his own stuff. He's going to impart his own flavor, right? Conor seems to imprint, he's one of those unique people we just recently talked about. He imprints everything him on whatever he does. He owns it. He shapes it. He creates his own reality, his own bubble, his own environment. He reshapes the truth, the reality. And Mystic Mac is what he called himself because he would predict fights. He would predict when he knocked people out. Mystic Mac! I'll take him out in the first fucking round. So that was part of his lore, his folklore, right? His legend. Which he is. Right now, he's a living legend in Ireland. That fucker walks anywhere around Ireland, and he's a god. It's strange, because I've seen articles where it post this handcart incident in New York City, and then he was just down here in Miami. He flies around. The world is no longer, it doesn't have any bounds for him. He flies anywhere on his private jet. He does anything. So St. Patrick's Day, I think he was in Chicago, and he was in Boston. So he flew his jet up to Boston. He was at the Boston game. He did the parade. And then he flew his jet to Chicago, and he was at the parade in downtown Chicago in his suit talking about his future. So he's trying to be larger than life. He's trying to really force himself into the Irish exposed world in America, Conor McGregor. But he threw the handcart in New York, and then he was down here in Miami at some exclusive property that he rented, went to a nightclub north of Miami Beach, or at the north end of Miami Beach, right? So if you look at Ocean Drive, it goes all the way up, and there's a specific point where you get some hotels and high-rises, and it turns from that very eclectic beach feel where you have all these fronts with hotels behind them, and the fronts have restaurants and little eateries and sit-outs, and then you look across the street, Ocean Drive, and it's got some tropical area with palm trees, with benches, with some grass that then turns into 200-300 feet of beach that goes right out to the ocean, right? North of that, there was some bar 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 in the morning. And listen, Conor's got a wife and I think a kid or maybe 2 kids now. She might be pregnant again. I don't know. He's got children now. I know for sure 1, and I think it's still an infant, a year, less than a year old, a year and a half. And I think she's pregnant again. He's out partying with his entourage at 2, 3 in the morning. Some Cuban dude, some Russian dude, Ali, whatever, some dude down in Miami rolls up on him with his phone, like, hey, Conor, take a picture, man, let's do selfie time. And Conor's like, oh yeah, give me that fucking phone. And he takes it, and he fucking throws it on the ground and smashes it, smacks the guy around or something. Maybe he didn't smack him around, because I don't think there was any assault charges. I think they called it theft, and it was a $1,000 iPhone, so they called it, I think, grand theft, anything over $500. And then he picked the phone up after he smashed it and maybe verbally lashed the guy. You fuck, yeah, leave me alone, you bother me fucking entourage. And jumps in his, entourage of town cars, limos, whatever, Escalades, and they roll out. And now this guy files charges. The cops show up. This guy says that his phone was stolen, his phone was destroyed. This guy was, violent and aggressive. And I think they have it all on tape. Conor has a crew that follows him around, a camera crew, and films everything. He's got his own camera and production team and company, and they do everything Conor McGregor. He started this when he was in the UFC, and he told Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, you'll no longer be responsible for my media day and all this stuff. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm doing my production. And they had to agree to that to continue to have him partake in the events. So they've made every concession in managing this guy. Dana White has said every time Conor McGregor fought, something came up as a major impediment that I had to manage. And we had to figure out how to get by this thing, make the agreement, and then move on to the fight. Fortunately, every time, he mangled and mauled people. It didn't distract him until recently here, when he just became larger than life. And much like Ronda Rousey or anyone else, it seems like his fight game suffered, or the fight game, the fighting community, the globe, the acceleration of this sport caught up with him. And his moment of invincibility was over with one gentleman who was a crushing python of death, Khabib Nurmagomedov, who destroyed him. So Dana White was approached and asked about this retirement statement. Dana White said, I'm not shocked. This guy's killing it. He's got other ventures. His Scotch, his Proper 12's killing it, right? And if you remember the last few fights here, the one with Khabib, Conor brought the Proper 12 right up onto the media day stage and shared it with Dana, drank it, took shots. So when you're doing that, you're not at the top of your fight game. You can't be. That takes energy away from your ability to focus on the fight, to visualize your skills, to put yourself in the mangling mindset. Few people can even do that. Very few, relatively none, can continue to win that way. And Conor lost. Dana White doesn't care. Conor McGregor doesn't care. Conor McGregor made the company billions. He had the greatest draws in UFC history. Dana White appreciates that. Dana White appreciates everything Conor did. I think Conor wanted ownership in the UFC. I'm not sure, but I think that's where they stopped. And we just heard Sylvester Stallone when the UFC sold pieces out, and I don't know what the company's called, AMD, AGM, whatever. It's the giant conglomerate, media conglomerate. Mark Wahlberg and some of these other guys bought a minor percentage of ownership with Zuffa when Zuffa went right to Fox or whatever they did to this new company. Sly Stallone owned some of it, and he was just talking some stupid shit about Conor. What's he doing for the brand? Okay, Sly, stick to whatever. I don't know. Thanks, Sly. Great to hear from you about your fight game. I think Sly did like one of the bare knuckle fighting shows. I don't know what the fuck he did. Who cares? His time's long past, dude. So I don't know what's going to happen with Conor here. I don't think it matters. Who cares? But my whole feel for the UFC is sort of strange. I don't have that excitement and that draw that I had with some of these huge events. And some of these huge events, like Khabib and Conor, or Conor against insert name. It could have been one of the Team Alpha male retards. It could have been one of the Brazilian retards, right? It could have been anyone. There was energy and it sucked me in. I could not watch. I could not stop myself from watching. I was compelled to have to purchase that or watch it when it happened live at the time. And I don't feel that now, and there's been some good fights and there's been some big fights, and I think there's some big fights coming up. It sort of sucks. For a period, I wanted all the time to watch and talk about MMA, and I think that was the Fox brand and the construct, the way the company was operating and the lined up fights. And for some reason with ESPN and whatever's going on and my inability to watch these ESPN Plus fights because I'm not going to pay for that shit, and the marketing and the branding and the venues and the fight matches, the games, the contests that they're lining up, I don't know. I'm not horribly compelled. And don't get me wrong, I still look at the cards. I love the fights. I love the fighters. Many of these cards anymore, I don't know the fighters. And some of them are female and a lot of them are lesser male fights. And these are the kids that are hungry. So these fights are brutal. I looked at this last card. I think there were 10 decisions out of 13 fights. There was a submission and 2 TKOs, I think. And one of the TKOs was a woman or a submission. And there was 10 decisions, 3-rounder, 5-rounders. Ooh, and I'm not saying nothing. I've seen 3-round and 5-round decisions that were brutal. Remember them. Robbie Lawler fights, Tyron Woodley fights, Stephen Thompson fights, Anthony Pettis fights. Who did Pettis fight? Ben, what's his name? Dude, we've seen a lot of brutal fights that were decisions. Great fights. But 10 of them were decisions. That means for 15 minutes or for 25 minutes, people, men or women, walked around in that ring throwing punches, maybe not throwing punches. I don't know. Weird vibe. And so I don't know what this thing with Conor McGregor is. And we'll have to see. But the brand of Conor McGregor, if he's gone and he moves on to media, he moves on to stardom, he moves on to movies, commercials, he moves on to some kind of larger-than-life modern-day legend, and not just a legendary fighter that's backed by action in the octagon or the ring. I hope he never fights in the boxing ring again. That's sad. It's the end of an era. There haven't been many people like Mystic Mac. The Notorious One changed the fight game. If you don't know that, if you didn't see that, if you didn't partake in that, then you're malaligned. Some frickin' Irishman, and I'm Irish, so I'm weirdly proud of it. I was drawn to this dude. He's a nobody off of no place. And he ripped up the middleweights, man. Calling shots. Killing anybody. Anybody. And for a moment, it was iron warfare on a battlefield. It was pretty epic. And that's where it took me. And that's why I enjoyed this. And I'm sad to see maybe this thing end and maybe to see him no longer walk into the octagon. I think he will walk into the octagon much like BJ Penn has done recently, or any of these legends recently. And I think it will be nothing other than a spectacle and a lesser fight. It won't be with the top of the top. It can't be that way. He'll never be able to compete at that level again because you have to be 150% fully invested at that level to produce at that level. You can't walk in and fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, who lives on a mat right now, if you're not doing the same and then having a mind like a fucking vault, steel, trap, iron killer, a murderer, murking people in practice on a daily, hourly basis. That's what turns you into the animal that mauls people in the octagon. Can you have an exceptional fight and shock the world like our New Yorker did over Georges St. Pierre? What's his name? I can't even remember his name ever. The little Italian guy. Because he's nobody. He won one fight. He shocked the world, knocked George out. And he had a good hand. He had a good right hand. But then you're done. George comes back and pummels you. One fight, when you have a legendary fight record and you flip the world upside down, that's something different. That's what Conor did. So I bid Conor adieu. Adieu. I wish I knew the Irish term for peace out, biatch. One of those Gaelic terms. Where the folk will see you folkers later. All right, I'm going to have some proper 12. Aye. What's it's Aaron go bravo. What's the drag or whatever, dragul or whatever the stupid. I don't even know the toasts in Irish. It's unfortunate. It's sad to see Conor go, but well, let's see where he shows up elsewhere on the planet. Who knows? Hopefully not in jail for beating up people who want selfies with him because he's bombed at 2:30 in the morning at some stupid disco bar, dance place, hangout in one of our major cities on the globe. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Florida, Miami, New York, LA, Chicago, Dublin. That's all I got on Conor McGregor. Subscribe, comment, like, share your thoughts if you have any. Keep watching the UFC. Dave DUI Show out!